Hi guys, how's it going? Hello everyone, how's it going? My name is Bolanle Olukanni, and I was the host of the Gender Justice series on Enough is Enough's Nigeria's platform. I spent a week talking to different first ladies across the geopolitical zones in Nigeria, and unfortunately, we had a situation where I had a conversation with the first lady of Kebbi State, Dr. Zainab Shinkafi Bagudu, and unfortunately, Instagram did what it did and it didn't save. And the conversation we had was on gender-based violence in the north, and specifically talking about Kebbi State. And it was really an eye-opening and robust conversation, and I just wanted to come back and do a recap on it because I felt like there were a lot of things that I learned and a lot of information that I feel it would be important to pass across, and also what I learned from the conversation with the first lady of Kebbi State. She was very, very explicit and also really just a well-rounded conversation. So we talked a lot about the role that religion plays in terms of knowing what age of consent really means, and she shared some really interesting pointers. During the conversation, I had raised some hesitation in regards to the fact that when we're trying to domesticate a lot of these different laws, the question is, how do we domesticate them in regions, like for example parts of the north that abide by Sharia law? How do we domesticate them in those regions? How do we ensure that we are not leaving that part of Nigeria out of the conversation because the laws are written in a way where people who are from the north or people who abide by Sharia law do not feel like they can domesticate those laws. And here are just a few pointers of what our conversation said. I took some notes, or rather the Enough Nigeria team took some notes, and I want to share some of them with you. So the first thing she talked about in the conversation was, she talked about the role that Islam plays and how Islam has a whole chapter dedicated to the rights of a woman. And also she talked about how there is a lot of opportunities for women to be able to feel like they have full rights. And this is what she said. We also talked a lot about how the Child Right Act must be properly enforced, and also the enforcement of the penal code. And I found it really interesting because I feel like in so many ways right now we're not having a good conversation with the north. The conversation is kind of just shut down in this place where it feels like us versus them, and the question is, how do we ensure that they're being carried along? She also mentioned that the idea of consent varies based on what society do we say gives us information about consent. So for example, I was saying that, well, in the West, consent is seen as 18, the age of 18, and that's based on psychological and also based on a bunch of research that they've done. Well, Her Excellency she made a good point. She said, well, that's research that they've done for their climate, for their population, for their people. What research has been done here to discuss what age consent really is? I also brought up the point about, the fact that girls who are younger than 18 or girls who are younger than 16, if they're getting married, that prevents and limits financial economic empowerment. And, we agreed on that point. She also discussed, the fact that girls who are younger, 11, 12, physically they might not have developed, but a lot of it has to do with your actual physical development, right? So it was a really robust conversation, and I think that there was a lot to be said, and there was a lot of detail that I got out of it. And she is a huge advocate for women's rights, and she has been pushing heavily to ensure that the various acts and laws that are out there, the VAPT Act, the penal codes, everything is domesticated in the state. And we've seen that Kebbi State has made some progress in terms of making sure that women are being advocated for. And I think it was interesting because the question is, it might not look like what we want, but is there room for it to slowly and patiently begin to seep into a community that's a bit more conservative than a lot of people who are in the South are used to? So that was pretty much, the overall conversation. And yeah. All right, well, I hope that was helpful, and I hope you guys learned a little bit. So yeah, thanks for tuning in.